Every Friday at 6:15 p.m., a broken widower entered a roadside diner and ordered dinner for a ghost. The entire town mocked him, until the night a ruthless billionaire heiress walked through those same doors after her luxury SUV broke down in a snowstorm. She was famous for destroying business rivals without mercy. He was a struggling single father who couldn't let go of the past. Neither of them expected that one conversation would shatter everything they thought they knew about survival, love, and the terrifying cost of living while pretending to be alive. Watch until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights inside May's diner hummed like dying insects trapped behind dirty plastic covers. Caleb Hayes pushed through the glass door at exactly 6:15 p.m., same as he did every Friday, and the bell above rang out the same flat note it had been ringing for the past 2 years. The November cold followed him inside, wrapping around his work boots and the frayed cuffs of his canvas jacket. He didn't look at anyone, not at May behind the counter, who had stopped asking him questions 6 months ago. Not at the couple in the corner booth who whispered and glanced his way like he was a museum exhibit. Not at the trucker by the window who shook his head slowly, the way people do when they've decided someone is too far gone to save. Caleb walked to the same table he always chose. Third booth from the door, cracked red vinyl seats, table surface scratched with initials from 20 years of bored high school kids. He sat down facing the door and placed his calloused hands flat on the table. His knuckles were split from today's work. He'd spent 8 hours tearing out rotten subfloor in a foreclosed house across town, breathing in decades of mold and mouse shit, and his shoulders ached in that deep way that never really stopped anymore. May appeared with her notepad, her face carefully neutral. She was 60-something, with gray hair pulled back tight, and the kind of eyes that had seen enough small-town tragedy to know when to stay quiet. "Same as always, sheesh?" she asked, her pen already moving. "Yeah," Caleb said. His voice came out rougher than he intended. 2 plates. The meatloaf special. Mashed potatoes. Green beans. May wrote it down without comment. She'd given up trying to understand 2 years ago, right around the time the whole town had. She turned away, and Caleb heard the couple in the corner booth start whispering again. He caught fragments. "Still doing it. Needs help. That poor little girl." He clenched his jaw and stared at the menu holder on the table, even though he'd memorized every item years ago. The worst part wasn't that they talked. The worst part was that sometimes, late at night when Mia was asleep and the house was too quiet, he wondered if they were right. The door opened again. Cold air rushed in. Caleb didn't look up. "Jesus Christ, what a shithole," a woman's voice said, sharp and clear, cutting through the diner's low murmur like a knife through wet paper. That made Caleb look up. The woman standing in the doorway was wildly out of place. She wore a black wool coat that probably cost more than Caleb made in 3 months, tailored so perfectly it looked like it had been built around her body. Her dark hair was pulled back in a way that seemed effortless, but probably took 20 minutes and 3 products to achieve. She was maybe 30, with the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that swept across the diner with immediate, calculated assessment. Behind her, through the still open door, Caleb could see a massive black SUV sitting at an awkward angle in the parking lot, one tire completely flat. "We don't have valet service," May said dryly from behind the counter. "But the door closes if you pull it." "Whoa." "Igor." The woman let the door swing shut and brushed snow off her shoulders with the casual disdain of someone who expected other people to handle inconveniences for her. She walked to the counter in heels that clicked against the linoleum like gunshots. "I need coffee," she said. "Black, and a phone charger if you have one." "We got coffee," May said. "No chargers. This isn't a Starbucks." My tashas. Clearly. The woman's eyes swept the diner again, landing briefly on Caleb before moving on. "How long until a tow truck can get here?" "In this weather?" May poured coffee into a chipped mug. "Hour, maybe 2. Depends if Jerry's sober." The woman's expression tightened just slightly, the only crack in her polished exterior. She took the mug without thanking May and turned to survey the seating options. The couple in the corner booth stared at her with the same slack-jawed expression that locals always got when someone from outside their zip code appeared. The trucker was asleep now, head tilted back, mouth open. The woman walked past empty tables and slid into the booth directly across from Caleb's, one row over, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something expensive that smelled like cedar, and something darker he couldn't identify. She pulled out her phone, frowned at the screen, then set it face down on the table with enough force to make the salt shaker jump. May appeared at Caleb's table carrying 2 plates. She set them down with practiced efficiency, one in front of Caleb, one across from him in the empty seat. Steam rose from both. "Eat it while it's hot," May said, and walked away. The woman in the next booth watched this entire exchange. Caleb felt her eyes on him as he picked up his fork and started cutting into the meatloaf. He didn't look at the second plate. He never looked at it directly. "Stood up, Caleb paused mid-chew. The woman was leaning slightly into the aisle between their booths, looking at him with expression that wasn't quite curiosity and wasn't quite judgment. "Excuse me?" Caleb said. "Your date." She gestured toward the untouched plate with her coffee mug. "Stood you up?" "No." "Then you're optimistic." Caleb set down his fork. "I'm not having this conversation. Why order 2 meals? Why sit next to a stranger instead of finding your own table? The light's better here." She took a sip of coffee, watching him over the rim. "Plus, you looked interesting." "I'm not." "Most interesting people say that." Caleb returned to his meatloaf, chewing slowly, deliberately ignoring her. He'd gotten good at ignoring people over the past 2 years. But this woman didn't seem to understand the social cues that made other people back off. She just sat there, drinking her coffee, occasionally glancing at her useless phone, and watching him with the kind of attention that made his skin itch. Finally, she spoke again. "Does she know she's late?" "She's not late." Caleb's voice came out flat. "She's not coming." "Then why?" "Because I made a promise." He said it more sharply than he meant to. "Can you drop it now?" The woman tilted her head slightly, studying him with dark, intelligent eyes. "What kind of promise?" "The kind that's none of your business." She smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who'd just found something interesting to pick apart. "Fair enough." Silence settled between them. Outside, snow was starting to fall harder, visible in the sodium vapor lights of the parking lot. Caleb ate mechanically, tasting nothing, going through motions he'd gone through 100 times before. The second plate stayed untouched. "Vivian Sterling," the woman said suddenly. She wasn't looking at him anymore, just staring into her coffee like it might have answers. "In case you were wondering," Caleb wasn't wondering, he didn't care, but something about the way she said her own name, tired, almost resentful, made him glance up. "Caleb Hayes." "You don't read much news, do you, Caleb?" "Not if I can help it." "Good instinct." She drained the rest of her coffee. "It's mostly garbage anyway." May appeared with the check, sliding it face down onto Caleb's table. He pulled out his wallet, cracked leather, held together with duct tape, and counted out exact bills. May took them and walked away without a word. Caleb stood, buttoning his jacket. He left the second plate sitting there, untouched, cooling under the fluorescent lights. "You're just going to leave it?" Vivian asked. Caleb looked down at her. Up close, he could see she was younger than he'd first thought. Maybe 29, 30 at most. There were faint shadows under her eyes, the kind that came from too many late nights and not enough sleep that actually mattered. "Every week," he said. "Same time, same table, same meal." "For how long?" 2 years. Vivian's expression shifted. Not quite pity, not quite understanding, but something in between. "That's a long time to wait for someone who isn't coming." "I'm not waiting," Caleb said quietly. "I'm remembering. He walked out before she could ask anything else. The cold hit him like a fist, and he pulled his jacket tighter, hunching his shoulders against the wind. His truck was parked at the far end of the lot, a '98 Ford with primer spots and a passenger door that didn't lock. He climbed in, started the engine on the 3rd try, and sat there for a moment with his hands on the wheel. Through the diner's fogged windows, he could see Vivian Sterling still sitting in her booth, backlit by the ugly yellow lights, staring at nothing. Caleb put the truck in gear and drove home. The house was dark when he pulled into the gravel driveway. It was a small 2-bedroom he'd bought 3 years ago for almost nothing because it had been days away from condemnation. He'd spent 2 years fixing it up. New roof, new wiring, new plumbing, new everything, but it still had the exhausted look of a place held together by determination rather than craftsmanship. Inside, the babysitter was asleep on the couch with the TV playing some reality show on mute. Her name was Rachel, and she was 17 and saving up for community college. Caleb woke her gently, paid her in cash, and waited until her mom picked her up before locking the door. He walked down the narrow hallway to Mia's room and pushed open the door carefully. His daughter was asleep in her twin bed, curled up under a quilt her grandmother had made. She was 7 years old, small for her age, with dark hair that tangled into impossible knots every night. One arm was thrown over her stuffed elephant, a gift from her mother that she refused to sleep without. Caleb stood in the doorway for a long time, just watching her breathe. This was the only part of the day that didn't hurt. The only time he felt like he wasn't failing at everything. He pulled the door almost closed and walked to the kitchen. The sink was full of dishes he'd meant to wash this morning. The table was covered in Mia's homework, math worksheets with uneven numbers, spelling words written in purple crayon. He made himself a sandwich he didn't want and ate it standing over the sink, staring at nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from the contractor he was supposed to meet tomorrow morning. Pushing to 10 a.m. Client wants changes. Caleb typed back a thumbs up and set the phone on the counter. 10 meant he could take Mia to school himself instead of relying on the neighbor. Small victories. He showered in water that never got quite hot enough, scrubbing sawdust and drywall dust from under his nails. In the mirror, he looked older than 32. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 3 years ago, gray starting at his temples. He'd lost weight he couldn't afford to lose. In bed, he lay awake for a long time, listening to the house settle and the wind rattle the window frames. He thought about the second plate sitting on the table at May's diner, getting cold, eventually scraped into the trash. He thought about Vivian Sterling, who'd asked too many questions and looked at him like he was a puzzle she wanted to solve. He thought about Emma. Always Emma. She'd been 28 when they met, working double shifts at a hospital in the city, trying to pay off nursing school loans. He'd been installing new cabinets in the break room, and she'd asked him if he could fix the coffee maker while he was at it. He'd laughed and said that wasn't in his contract. She'd smiled and said neither was free coffee, but here they were. 6 months later, they were married. A year after that, Mia was born. And for 3 perfect years, Caleb had believed the universe might actually be capable of fairness. Then the headaches started. Then the diagnosis. Then 9 months of watching the strongest person he'd ever known get carved away piece by something neither of them could fight. Before she died, Emma had made him promise something. Not in the hospital. She'd been too far gone by then, tangled in tubes and monitors, barely there behind her own eyes. She'd made him promise 3 weeks earlier, sitting at their favorite table in May's diner, picking at fries she couldn't really taste anymore. "Don't stop going," she'd said. Her voice had been thin, stretched tight over pain she was trying to hide. "After. When I'm gone. Don't let this place become sad for you. Emmy." "Promise me, Caleb, promise. You'll keep coming here. Keep ordering the meatloaf. Keep—" She'd stopped, swallowing hard. "Keep living in places we loved. Don't turn them into graveyards." So he'd promised. And he'd kept that promise for 2 years, every Friday night, ordering 2 plates and eating alone while the entire town decided he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. He honestly didn't know anymore. Caleb closed his eyes and tried to sleep. By Monday morning, he'd forgotten about Vivian Sterling completely. He dropped Mia at school, watching her run across the playground toward a group of girls who tolerated her more than they included her, and drove to the job site on the south side of town. The house was a Victorian-era disaster that a young couple from the city had bought with dreams of Instagram-worthy renovations. Caleb's job was to make those dreams structurally sound enough that they wouldn't die in the night when the ceiling collapsed. He spent the morning ripping out plaster and lathe, filling a dumpster with 100 years of mouse nests and crumbling insulation. His partner for the day was Danny, who was 23 and talked constantly about crypto investments he didn't understand. Caleb let the words wash over him and focused on the work. At lunch, they sat on the porch eating sandwiches from the gas station. Danny was scrolling through his phone, shaking his head at something. "Dude, you see this?" He turned the screen toward Caleb. "That Sterling woman, the tech billionaire? Someone got a photo of her at some shitty diner upstate." Caleb's sandwich turned to paste in his mouth. On Danny's phone was a grainy photo taken through a window. He could see the inside of May's diner, The counter, the booths, and clearly visible in the foreground, Vivian Sterling sitting alone with a cup of coffee. "Why's that news?" Caleb asked, trying to sound disinterested. "Are you kidding? She's worth like $5 billion. She doesn't go to places like that. People are losing their shit trying to figure out what she was doing in the middle of nowhere." Danny zoomed in on the photo. "Look, you can see her driver's license in her hand. Some people are saying she got stranded or something." Caleb finished his sandwich without tasting it. "Caleb, sounds boring." "Mo soy psychiatra." "Boring?" "Dude, she's like the most brutal CEO in tech. She fired 300 people last month over email. On Christmas Eve, someone made a TikTok about it that got like 40 million views." Danny finally put his phone away. "Rich people are insane, man." They went back to work. Caleb tried not to think about it, but the image of Vivian sitting in that booth stayed with him all afternoon. The way she'd looked at him, the questions she'd asked, the tired edge in her voice when she'd said her own name, like it was something heavy she had to carry everywhere. When he picked up Mia from school, she was crying. He saw her before she saw him, sitting alone on the bench outside the main office, her backpack clutched against her chest, tears streaming down her face. Caleb's heart stopped. He parked crooked and ran across the parking lot. Hey, baby, what happened?" He knelt in front of her, checking her over for injuries, finding none. "Are you hurt?" Mia shook her head, sobbing too hard to talk. The principal appeared in the doorway, Mrs. Chen, a thin woman with kind eyes and no patience for bullshit. "Mr. Hayes, good. Come inside, please." Caleb looked between her and Mia. "What happened?" "Inside, please." He picked up Mia. She was getting too big for this, but she wrapped her arms around his neck and pressed her face into his shoulder, and followed Mrs. Chen into the office. They sat in uncomfortable plastic chairs while Mia cried silently against his chest. "There was an incident at recess," Mrs. Chen said carefully. "Some of the older girls were asking Mia about you, about your Friday dinners at the diner." Caleb's jaw tightened. "What did they say?" "They called her father crazy. They said—" Mrs. Chen paused, choosing words. "They said mean things, children things." Mia pushed one of them, and the girl fell and scraped her knee. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for violence, so—" "She pushed her?" Caleb's voice came out harder than he meant. "That's it? Word should have got my daughter in trouble for defending herself against bullies. Mr. Hayes?" "No." Caleb stood up, still holding Mia. "You want to talk about zero tolerance? How about zero tolerance for the kids who were tormenting her? Or are they too important because their parents write checks to the PTA?" Mrs. Chen's expression hardened. "I understand you're upset. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my daughter gets punished for being different while everyone else gets to be cruel for free." "Mr. Hayes, if you calm down—" "I am calm," Caleb said, even though he wasn't. "We're leaving. If you want to suspend her, send me the paperwork. Otherwise, we're done here." So he walked out before she could respond, carrying Mia across the parking lot and buckling her into the truck. She'd stopped crying, but her face was red and splotchy, and she wouldn't look at him. "I'm sorry," she whispered as he started the engine. "For what?" "For pushing Lacey, for getting in trouble, for—" Her voice cracked. "For having a crazy dad." Caleb's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He wanted to tell her he wasn't crazy. He wanted to explain that promises mattered, that keeping Emma's memory alive was important, that grief didn't make someone broken. Instead, he said, "You're not apologizing for defending yourself. And I'm not crazy." "Then why does everyone say you are?" Caleb didn't have an answer. He drove them home in silence. That Friday, Caleb almost didn't go to the diner. He thought about it all week. About Mia crying on the bench. About Mrs. Chen's carefully neutral expression. About the way the whole town looked at him like he was something broken that needed fixing. Maybe they were right. Maybe this ritual he'd been maintaining for 2 years was just an elaborate way of refusing to move forward. Maybe Emma would be disappointed in him for getting stuck. But when Friday night came and the clock hit 6 p.m., Caleb found himself pulling on his jacket anyway. Mia was at Rachel's house for a sleepover, the first one she'd been invited to in months, and Caleb had practically shoved her out the door with her overnight bag. He'd take any sign that the other kids might start treating her normally again. The diner was nearly empty when he arrived. May gave him her usual nod. The same trucker was in the same spot. Caleb walked to his booth, sat down, and waited. May brought the menus he didn't need. Same? Caleb opened his mouth to say yes. Then he stopped. Actually, he said slowly, just one plate tonight. The special. May's eyebrows went up slightly. It was the most expression he'd seen from her in 2 years. You sure? Yeah, just one. She wrote it down and walked away. Caleb sat there feeling like he'd just stepped off a cliff and was waiting to find out if there was ground below or just endless falling. His hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against the table. The door opened. Cold air rushed in. Caleb looked up out of habit and felt his stomach drop. Vivian Sterling stood in the doorway, scanning the diner. She was dressed differently tonight. Jeans, a sweater, a more casual coat, but she was unmistakably the same woman. Her eyes found Caleb, and something flickered across her face. Recognition, decision. She walked straight to his table and slid into the booth across from him. Hi, she said. Caleb stared at her. What are you doing here? Eating dinner? This is 40 miles from anywhere. There's no reason for you to be here. Vivian picked up the menu, studied it like she hadn't already seen it last week. Maybe I like the coffee. Nobody likes the coffee here. True? She set down the menu. Okay, you want the truth? I couldn't stop thinking about you. Caleb's first instinct was to stand up and leave. His second instinct was to ask why. He did neither. He just sat there, tired and confused and completely unprepared for this conversation. That's weird, he finally said. Is it? Vivian leaned forward slightly. You show up every week and order dinner for someone who died. That's a lot more interesting than anything happening in my life. My grief isn't entertainment. I didn't say it was. Her voice was sharp now, defensive. I said it was interesting. There's a difference. May appeared with Caleb's plate, one plate, just for him, and set it down with a meaningful look that clearly said, "What the hell is happening?" Caleb had no answer for her. You want anything? May asked Vivian. Coffee. And Vivian glanced at Caleb's plate. Whatever he's having. May walked away. Vivian folded her hands on the table and looked at Caleb with those dark, intelligent eyes that seemed to see too much. Why just one plate tonight? She asked. Why do you care? I don't know. She said it like she was genuinely surprised by her own answer. I really don't know, but I do. Caleb picked up his fork, but he didn't start eating. The meatloaf sat there steaming, and all he could think about was Emma sitting across from him 3 years ago, laughing at something stupid he'd said, stealing fries off his plate, even though she'd ordered her own. My wife died, he said quietly. 2 years ago. Cancer. She made me promise I'd keep coming here, keep ordering her favorite meal, keep living instead of turning everything we loved into a graveyard. Vivian didn't say she was sorry. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, that's why you order 2 plates. Ordered, Caleb corrected. Past tense. I just changed it. Why tonight? Because my daughter got suspended from school for pushing a kid who called me crazy. Because the whole town thinks I've lost my mind. Because... He stopped, jaw working. Because maybe they're right. They're not. You don't know me. No, Vivian agreed. But I know crazy. I've spent my entire adult life in rooms full of people who smile at your face and plan your destruction behind your back. I've watched people burn down their own companies out of spite. I've seen adults throw literal tantrums because they didn't get corner offices. She paused. You're not crazy. You're grieving. Those aren't the same thing. May returned with Vivian's order. They ate in silence for a while, the diner's fluorescent lights humming overhead, the wind rattling the windows. It should have been awkward. Somehow, it wasn't. Can I ask you something? Caleb said finally. Yes. Why are you really here? And don't say the coffee. Vivian set down her fork. For the first time since Caleb had met her, she looked uncertain, vulnerable. Because last week, she said slowly, sitting in this shitty diner in the middle of nowhere, I had the first honest conversation I've had with another human being in 5 years. And when I got back to the city, back to my office and my board meetings, and my assistant managing my schedule in 6-minute increments, she stopped. Everything felt fake, like I was playing a character in someone else's story. But here, Talking to you, I felt real for half an hour. Unraveled. Caleb didn't know what to say to that. That's also weird, he managed finally. Vivian laughed. A real laugh, not the polished sound of someone performing amusement. Yeah, it really is. They finished eating. May brought the check, and this time Vivian grabbed it before Caleb could. I'm paying, she said when he started to protest. I can't let you. It's $22. I'm not buying you a car. Let me do this. Caleb sat back, studying her. Okay, fine. Outside, the snow had started again, fat flakes drifting down through the parking lot lights. Vivian pulled on her coat, and they walked out together into the cold. Her SUV was parked next to his truck. The tire had been fixed, but the vehicle still looked absurdly out of place. Same time next week? Vivian asked. Caleb should have said no. Should have told her this was weird and inappropriate, and he didn't need a billionaire project in his life. Instead, he heard himself say, yeah, same time. Vivian smiled, small, genuine. Good. She got in her SUV and drove away, leaving Caleb standing in the parking lot, snow collecting on his shoulders, wondering what the hell he'd just agreed to. The following Friday, Caleb arrived at the diner 10 minutes early and immediately regretted it. He sat in his truck with the engine running, heat blasting against the November cold, watching the door and feeling like an idiot. What was he doing? Waiting for a billionaire to show up for dinner like they were friends? Like this was normal? He was about to leave when the black SUV pulled into the lot. Vivian got out wearing the same casual clothes from last week. Jeans, boots, a dark coat, and Caleb realized she'd probably bought them specifically for these trips. Like she needed a costume to pretend to be regular. The thought should have annoyed him. Instead, it made something in his chest twist sideways. He climbed out of his truck and met her halfway across the parking lot. You're early, Vivian said. So are you. I didn't want to be late. It's not a date, Caleb said automatically. I didn't say it was. They stood there in the cold, breath fogging between them, neither moving toward the door. Finally, Vivian laughed. That real laugh again, the one that didn't sound practiced. This is stupid, she said. We're both standing in a parking lot, freezing our asses off because neither of us knows what we're doing. I know what I'm doing, Caleb lied. I'm getting dinner. Right, with someone you don't know and didn't invite. You invited yourself. I did. Vivian started walking toward the diner. And you're still here, so clearly you didn't mind that much. Caleb followed her inside. May looked up from wiping down the counter, her expression shifting from neutral to something close to surprised when she saw them walk in together. The trucker in the corner booth stopped mid-chew. A waitress Caleb didn't recognize dropped a fork. Small towns. Everything was a fucking production. They sat in Caleb's usual booth. May appeared almost immediately, coffee pot in hand, eyes moving between them like she was trying to solve a math problem. 2 plates tonight? She asked Caleb. He hesitated. Vivian was watching him, her expression carefully blank, giving him space to decide. 2 plates, Caleb said finally. But we're both eating. May poured coffee for both of them without comment and walked away. Caleb wrapped his hands around the mug, feeling the heat seep into his calloused palms. Across from him, Vivian pulled off her coat and folded it neatly beside her. So, she said, how was your week? Are we really doing small talk? Would you prefer awkward silence? Honestly, kind of. Vivian smiled into her coffee. My week was terrible. My CFO resigned because I wouldn't approve his request to expense a private jet for a meeting that could have been an email. My board is threatening a vote of no confidence. And someone leaked internal documents to the press that make me look like I'm running a sweatshop. Are you? No, but I'm running a company that expects results, and apparently that makes me a monster. She took a sip of coffee, winced. This is worse than I remembered. Then why drink it? Because it's real. Everything else in my life is designed to taste perfect and mean nothing. But chats. May brought their food. 2 plates of meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans that looked like they'd been boiled into submission. Caleb picked up his fork and started eating. Vivian did the same, and for a few minutes they just sat there in comfortable silence while the diner hummed around them. My daughter came home yesterday, Caleb said finally. Caleb, and told me she doesn't want to go to school anymore. Vivian set down her fork. Because of the suspension? Because of everything. The staring, the whispers, the way other kids' parents look at her like she's contagious. He pushed his mashed potatoes around his plate. She's 7 years old. She shouldn't have to carry my shit. What did you tell her? That people are cruel when they don't understand something. That being different isn't the same as being wrong. Caleb met Vivian's eyes. But I don't know if I believe that anymore. You should. Why? Because you know so much about my life? No, Vivian said quietly, because I know what it's like to be different. To have everyone watching, waiting for you to fail, treating you like you're either a saint or a monster with no room to just be human. Caleb studied her. In the harsh diner lighting, she looked tired, the kind of tired that sleep didn't fix. That why you keep coming back here? He asked. To feel human? Maybe. Vivian picked up her fork again, but she didn't eat. Or maybe I'm just tired of being surrounded by people who want something from me. Money, access, status, whatever. She paused. You don't want anything. That's rare. I want you to stop psychoanalyzing me over meatloaf. Deal. If you stop pretending you don't want to talk to someone. Caleb opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. She wasn't wrong. The truth was, the past 2 years had been crushingly lonely. His friends had drifted away, not knowing how to talk to him after Emma died. His family lived 3 states over and called once a month out of obligation. May was kind but distant. Mia needed him to be a father, not a friend. And here was this strange, sharp woman who'd crashed into his life for no good reason, asking nothing from him except honesty. Fine, he said. We can talk. But if you start asking me about my feelings, I'm leaving. Vivian's smile was small and genuine. Noted. They finished eating. May brought the check, and again Vivian grabbed it before Caleb could move. He didn't fight her this time. Outside, the temperature had dropped another 10 degrees. They stood by their vehicles, snow crunching under their boots. Same time next week? Vivian asked. You're just going to keep doing this? Unless you tell me to stop. Caleb should have told her to stop. Should have said this was weird and confusing and he didn't need complications. But standing there in the cold with this woman who'd somehow become the most honest conversation in his week, he couldn't make himself say it. Same time, he agreed. Over the next month, Friday nights became the thing Caleb looked forward to and dreaded in equal measure. Vivian showed up every week at 6:15 sharp. Sometimes they talked about nothing, the weather, the terrible coffee, May's ability to serve food with maximum judgment. Sometimes they talked about real things. Vivian told him about board meetings that felt like gladiator fights, about the weight of making decisions that affected thousands of jobs, about the particular loneliness of being 29 years old and unable to trust anyone. Caleb told her about Mia's bad dreams, about the house projects he couldn't afford to finish, about the way grief ambushed him at random moments, in the grocery store, at stoplights, folding laundry. They never talked about what they were doing, never defined it. It existed in this strange space between friendship and something else, something neither of them wanted to name. Then, the second Friday in December, Vivian didn't show up. Caleb waited until 6:45, watching the door, telling himself he wasn't disappointed. She probably had work. She probably got tired of slumming it in a small-town diner. She probably remembered she was a billionaire, and he was a carpenter barely keeping his head above water. He ate alone. May didn't comment, but her expression said everything. When he left, he drove home angry at himself for caring. His phone rang as he pulled into his driveway. Unknown number. Yeah? He answered. Don't hang up. Vivian's voice, tense and low. I know I missed dinner. I'm sorry. Something came up. You don't owe me an explanation. I'm at my office in the city. There's a situation. I can't. She stopped, and Caleb heard voices in the background, aggressive and overlapping. I have to go, but I wanted to call. I didn't want you to think I just bailed. It's fine, Caleb said, even though it wasn't. It's not. And More voices, sharper now. Someone was yelling. Shit, I really have to go. I'll call you later. She hung up. Caleb sat in his truck staring at his phone, wondering when this had become complicated. Vivian called 3 hours later. Caleb was in bed, not sleeping, when his phone lit up. You still awake? She asked. Yeah. Can I tell you something without you thinking I'm insane? Probably not, but go ahead. Oh. He heard her breathe out, long and shaky. I fired my entire executive team tonight. All of them. 18 people. Because I found out they've been running a separate set of books to hide revenue losses they caused by making decisions without my approval. Caleb sat up. Jesus. It gets better. They're threatening to sue. The board is having an emergency meeting tomorrow to discuss removing me as CEO, and the press is going to have this story by morning because one of them already leaked it. Another shaky breath. So, that's my Friday. How was yours? I ate meatloaf alone and felt pathetic about it. Vivian laughed, but it was brittle. Want to trade? Not even a little bit. They talked until almost midnight. Vivian in her corner office 40 miles away, Caleb in his bedroom with the heater rattling. She told him about the moment she'd realized the betrayal, the cold clarity that had settled over her as she'd methodically destroyed the careers of people she'd trusted. He told her about the year after Emma died, when he'd almost lost the house because he couldn't focus long enough to finish jobs, when he'd seriously considered whether Mia would be better off with his sister. Neither of them said why they were telling each other these things. Neither of them acknowledged that this was no longer just Friday night dinners. When they finally hung up, Caleb lay awake for another hour, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what the hell was happening to him. The next Friday, Vivian showed up at 6:15 with a black eye. Caleb stood up so fast he knocked his water glass over. What happened? Sit down, Vivian said quietly. It looks worse than it is. That's not an answer. She slid into the booth, moving carefully, like her ribs hurt. May appeared with coffee, took one look at Vivian's face, and disappeared without a word. Tell me what happened, Caleb said, his voice low and dangerous. A reporter cornered me outside my building, wanted a statement about the executive firings. I said no comment. He followed me to my car. Vivian wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. I pushed him away. He pushed back. I fell against the car door. End of story. Did you call the police and deal with more media attention? No. Vivian, it's handled, Caleb. My security team pulled him off. He's been banned from the building. My lawyers are considering options. She took a sip of coffee, winced when the hot liquid touched her split lip. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're sitting in a diner with a black eye because you have nowhere else to go. Something cracked in Vivian's expression. For a second, she looked young and lost and completely overwhelmed. Then the mask came back up. You're right, she said. I have an 8,000 square foot penthouse, a mansion in the Hamptons, and a beach house in Malibu. But the only place I want to be is this shitty diner with you. So yeah, maybe I'm not fine. May brought their food. Neither of them touched it. I can't do this anymore, Vivian said quietly. Caleb's stomach dropped. Do what? Pretend I'm in control. Pretend the board isn't about to force me out. Pretend 18 people I trusted didn't just try to destroy everything I built. She looked at him, her eyes too bright. Pretend I don't drive 40 miles every Friday because talking to you is the only thing that makes me feel like I'm not disappearing. Caleb didn't know what to say. Across the diner, the trucker was pretending not to listen. May was definitely listening. None of it mattered. I'm not a solution to your problems, Caleb said carefully. I know. I'm a broke single dad with a dead wife and a kid who gets bullied because of me. I know that too. So what are you doing here? Vivian met his eyes. I have no idea, but I know I can't stop. They sat there in the terrible silence that came after someone said something true and scary. Finally, Caleb reached across the table and took her hand. Her fingers were cold. He held them anyway. Eat your dinner, he said. Then we'll figure out what comes next. Vivian's smile was small and broken and real. Okay. They ate slowly, not talking, just existing in the same space. When they finished, Caleb paid. He insisted, and Vivian let him, and they walked outside together. The December wind cut through their coats. I should go, Vivian said, but she didn't move. Yeah, the board meeting is Monday. They're probably going to remove me. What happens then? Okay. I don't know. I've never failed at anything before. She looked at him. That sounds arrogant. It sounds honest. Vivian stepped closer. They were standing too close now, close enough that Caleb could see the different colors in her black eye, the way her breath fogged in the cold. I should have stayed away from you, she said. This isn't fair to you. Nothing's fair, Caleb said. We just do our best anyway. She kissed him, quick and soft and tasting like coffee. Then she pulled back, searching his face for a reaction. Caleb's heart was hammering. That was a mistake, Vivian finished. I know. I'm sorry. I was going to say unexpected. They stood there, frozen, neither backing away. Finally, Vivian laughed, that real laugh he'd started to need. We're idiots, she said. Yeah. This can't work. Probably not. So we should stop. We should. Neither of them moved. Caleb's hand came up, almost on its own, and touched her face carefully, avoiding the bruise. Vivian leaned into it, closing her eyes. Next Friday? She asked. Next Friday? Caleb agreed. On Monday morning, Caleb's phone exploded with notifications. He was at a job site, tearing out a rotted bathroom, when Danny started shouting from the other room. Dude! Get in here! Caleb dropped his crowbar and walked into the hallway. Danny was holding his phone out, eyes huge. That woman, the billionaire, Sterling, she's all over the news. Caleb's stomach turned to ice. He took the phone. The headline was from a major financial news site. Sterling Tech CEO retains control after dramatic board confrontation. Below it was a photo of Vivian leaving a building, looking exhausted but determined. The article said she'd spent 11 hours in a closed-door board meeting fighting to keep her position. She'd won by a single vote. There was another article below it, this one from a gossip site. The headline made Caleb's blood run cold. Who is the mystery man? Photos surface of Vivian Sterling's secret small-town romance. The photo was grainy, clearly taken through the diner window with a long lens, but it was unmistakable. Caleb and Vivian sitting across from each other, his hand covering hers on the table. Holy shit, Danny said. Is that you? Caleb handed back the phone without answering. His own phone started ringing. Unknown number. He let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Different number. Again. Caleb? Danny was staring at him. Dude, what's going on? I have to go, Caleb said. He left the job site, got in his truck, and drove. Not home. Reporters might be there. Not to Mia's school. He couldn't risk them following him there. He just drove, hands shaking on the wheel, phone ringing constantly. Finally, a number he recognized. He answered. Don't talk, Vivian said immediately. Just listen. I'm sorry. I didn't know there were photographers. My security is handling it, but the photos are already everywhere. I'm sending someone to your house to make sure no one bothers you or Mia. And I need you to know... Stop, Caleb said. Caleb, I can't do this. The words came out harsh. I have a daughter. I have a life that's already too complicated. I can't have reporters following me. I can't have Mia seeing her dad in tabloids. I can't. I know, Vivian said quietly. I know, and I'm sorry, but it's too late to take it back. Caleb pulled over on the side of the road. His chest felt too tight. This was a mistake. Was it? Yes, all of it. I should have told you to leave after that first night. But you didn't. I should have. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Vivian spoke, her voice steady but hollow. Okay, she said. If that's what you want, I'll stay away. I'll have my lawyers issue a statement saying we're acquaintances, nothing more. The story will die in a week. A pause. But I need to know if that's really what you want, or if you're just scared. Does it matter? To me? Yes. Caleb closed his eyes. He thought about Emma, about the promise he'd made to keep living. He thought about Mia, who deserved a father who wasn't afraid of everything. He thought about Vivian, who'd somehow become the first person in 2 years who made him feel like he could breathe. I don't know what I want, he said finally. Then figure it out, Vivian said. Because I'm done apologizing for giving a shit about someone. If you want me gone, say it clearly. But don't hide behind your daughter or your dead wife or your fear of what people think. She hung up. Caleb sat in his truck on the side of the road for a long time, phone silent in his lap, trying to remember how to breathe. That Friday, he went to the diner alone. Vivian wasn't there. He ordered one plate, ate mechanically, paid and left. The next Friday, same thing. The third Friday, Mia asked if she could come with him. Why? Caleb asked, surprised. She'd never shown interest before. Because you're sad when you come home, Mia said simply. Maybe if I come, you'll be less sad. So he took her. She ordered chicken fingers and told him about a book she was reading, and Caleb tried to focus on his daughter instead of the empty booth across the aisle where a woman with dark eyes and too many problems had somehow become essential to his life. They were almost finished eating when the door opened and Vivian walked in. She looked different, thinner, tired, but she walked straight to their table and stopped, looking between Caleb and Mia. Hi, she said. Mia stared at her with wide eyes. Are you the lady from the pictures? Mia, Caleb started. Yes, Vivian said. I'm that lady. Are you Dad's girlfriend? Mia, enough. But Vivian crouched down beside the booth, meeting Mia at eye level. No, she said honestly. I'm not his girlfriend. I'm just someone who cares about him a lot and messed up by not being more careful. Mia studied her with the brutal honesty of 7-year-olds. Dad cries at night sometimes. Are you why? Caleb felt his face go hot. Mia, stop. It's okay, Vivian said quietly. She looked at Mia. Maybe partly, but your dad has lots of reasons to be sad. I'm just one more thing that got complicated. He's sad a lot, Mia said, since Mom died, but he was less sad when you started coming here. Nobody said anything. May had stopped pretending to clean and was openly watching now. The trucker had given up all pretense. This was officially a public spectacle. Can I talk to your dad alone for a minute? Vivian asked Mia. Mia looked at Caleb. He nodded. She slid out of the booth and went to sit at the counter, where May immediately gave her a cookie and a conspiratorial look. Vivian slid into Mia's vacated seat. Up close, Caleb could see she'd been crying recently. Her eyes were red, her face pale. I thought you weren't coming back, Caleb said. I wasn't. Then I realized I was letting you push me away because you're scared, and I'm tired of letting scared people make my decisions. She folded her hands on the table. So here's what I want to say. I know this is complicated. I know you have a daughter to protect. I know your life doesn't need more chaos. But I also know that the last 3 weeks without you have been the loneliest 3 weeks I've had in years, and I'm done pretending I don't need this. Need what? You. This. Whatever this is. She gestured between them. I'm not asking you to marry me, Caleb. I'm asking you to stop running away from something that might actually be good. Caleb looked over at Mia, who was watching them while pretending not to. His daughter, who'd been through so much already, who deserved stability and normalcy, and a father who didn't keep adding complications to their lives. But she'd also said he'd been less sad, and she wasn't wrong. The media's not going to stop, Caleb said quietly. Probably not. Mia's going to deal with more shit at school. Probably. Your board's going to lose their minds. Already have. Vivian's smile was small. Are you done listing reasons why this is a terrible idea? I have more. I bet you do. She reached across the table, palm up, waiting. Caleb stared at her hand. 2 years ago, Emma had made him promise to keep living. He'd kept that promise the only way he knew how, by going through motions, maintaining rituals, existing, but not really living. And then this impossible woman had walked into his life and reminded him what it felt like to actually want something. He put his hand in hers. This is probably a mistake, he said. He said, almost definitely. We're going to regret it. Most likely. But I'm tired of being safe. Vivian's smile was real this time, bright and relieved. Me too. From the counter, Mia was grinning. May was shaking her head. The trucker was probably already texting everyone he knew. Caleb didn't care anymore. He held Vivian's hand across the table in a diner that had seen too much of his grief. And for the first time in 2 years, he felt something other than heavy. What Caleb hadn't anticipated was how quickly normal became impossible. The photographers showed up at Mia's school on Monday morning. 3 of them, with long lenses and zero shame, camping out across the street from the main entrance. Caleb saw them when he pulled up to drop off Mia, and his hands tightened on the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. "Dad?" Mia's voice was small from the back seat. "Why are those people taking pictures?" Don't look at them, Caleb said. "Just get out, walk straight to the door, and don't stop for anyone." "Are they bad people?" "They're just doing their job." He twisted around to look at her. "But if anyone tries to talk to you, anyone at all, you go straight to Mrs. Chen's office, okay?" Mia nodded, her face pale. Caleb got out and opened her door, positioning himself between her and the cameras. He could hear the shutters clicking, rapid fire, as he walked his daughter to the entrance. A woman's voice called out, "Mr. Hayes, is it true you're dating Vivian Sterling?" He kept walking. "How long have you been seeing each other? Does your daughter approve of the relationship?" Caleb got Mia through the door, watched her disappear down the hallway, then turned and walked straight at the photographers. They actually backed up, surprise on their faces. "You photograph my daughter again," Caleb said quietly, "and I will make your lives very difficult. Are we clear?" The woman who'd shouted questions held up her hands. "We're on public property. First Amendment." "I don't care about your amendment. Stay away from my kid." He got back in his truck and drove to work, his phone already ringing with a number he now recognized as Vivian's personal line. "I know," she said before he could speak. "My team is handling it. They'll be gone by this afternoon." "They were at her school, Vivian, taking pictures of a 7-year-old. "I know, and I'm sorry, but my lawyers are already drafting cease and desist letters. This stops today. It shouldn't have started at all." Silence. Then, carefully, "Are you regretting Friday night?" Caleb rubbed his face with his free hand. He was parked outside the Victorian he was supposed to be working on, but he couldn't make himself get out of the truck. "I don't know what I'm regretting. I just know my daughter is scared." "Mine too," Vivian said quietly. "You don't have a daughter. I meant me. I'm scared too." She paused. "But I'm not running. Are you?" "Yeah." That was the question, wasn't it? Caleb had spent 2 years running from everything. From grief, from connection, from the possibility that life could be anything other than survival. And then he'd stopped running just for a moment, and immediately everything had caught fire. "I'm still here," he said finally. "Good, because I need to see you tonight. Not at the diner, somewhere private." "C'est some bomb. It's my place?" "Too exposed. The press knows where you live. They'll be there by nightfall." He could hear her thinking, "I have a cabin, about an hour north. Nobody knows about it. Can you get away?" Caleb thought about his schedule, about Mia, about the million reasons this was a bad idea. "Yeah, I can get away. 7 o'clock. I'll text you the address." She hung up. Caleb sat in his truck for another 5 minutes, trying to figure out what he was doing. Then he went to work and spent the day ripping out old plaster, letting the physical labor quiet his mind. The cabin was nothing like what Caleb expected. He'd been imagining some billionaire mansion in the woods, all glass and modern architecture. Instead, he found an actual cabin, small, wood-sided, tucked into a grove of pines at the end of a dirt road that his truck barely handled. Vivian's SUV was already there, parked beside a stack of firewood that looked professionally arranged. Warm light spilled from the windows. Caleb grabbed the six-pack he'd picked up on the way and walked to the door. It opened before he could knock. Vivian stood there in jeans and a sweater, her hair down for once, loose around her shoulders. She looked younger like this, less like a CEO and more like a person. "You found it," she said. "GPS almost sent me into a creek." "Yeah, the directions are deliberately bad." She stepped back to let him in. "Keeps people from showing up unannounced." The inside was small and cozy, stone fireplace, worn furniture, shelves full of paperback books. A fire was already going, snapping and popping. It smelled like wood smoke and old pine. "This doesn't match your aesthetic," Caleb said, setting down the beer. "It was my grandmother's. She left it to me when she died." Vivian pulled 2 bottles from the six-pack, twisted off the caps with her hands. It's the only place I own that feels like mine. She handed him a beer and they stood there awkwardly, like teenagers who didn't know what to do now that they were alone together. Finally, Caleb laughed. "This is weird," he said. "So weird." Vivian sat on the couch, tucking her legs under her. "I brought you here to talk, and now I don't know what to say." Caleb sat in the armchair across from her. "You could start with what happened with the photographers. They're gone. My lawyers scared them off with enough legal threats that they won't be back." She took a drink. "But there will be others. Different ones. This isn't going away." "How do you live like this, Heb?" "I don't know. I've been doing it so long I forgot there was another way." She stared into the fire. "When I started my company, I was 23. I had an idea and no money and a chip on my shoulder the size of a building. I worked 100-hour weeks, slept in my office, ate ramen for every meal, and when it finally took off, when I finally had money and power and respect, I thought I'd won." "But you didn't?" "No. I just traded one prison for another. Now I have money, but I can't trust anyone. I have power, but everyone wants to take it from me. I have respect, but it's based on fear, not anything real." She looked at him. "And then I met you, and for the first time in years, someone looked at me like I was just a person. Not a dollar sign, not a threat. Just me." Caleb didn't know what to say to that. He drank his beer and watched the fire and tried to process what was happening between them. "I'm not good at this," he said finally. "At what?" "Any of it. Relationships, connection, moving forward." He set down his bottle. "Emma was easy. We met, we clicked, we got married. It all happened fast and natural. I didn't have to think about it. And this isn't easy. Nothing about this is easy." Vivian smiled sadly. "No, but maybe that's better. Maybe easy things don't last. Emma lasted until cancer killed her. I'm sorry, that was stupid. No, it's..." Caleb stopped, searching for words. "You're right. It was easy. And maybe that's because we were young and stupid and didn't know how hard life could get. But this," he gestured between them, "this is hard because we both know exactly how badly things can go wrong. They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled. Outside, wind moved through the pines with a sound like rushing water. Vivian got up and brought the rest of the six-pack to the coffee table, then sat on the couch again, closer to Caleb's chair this time. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yeah." "When you look at me, do you see her?" Caleb knew she meant Emma. "No, you're nothing alike. Is that good or bad?" "I don't know yet." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Emma was warm. She made friends everywhere. She could talk to anyone. "You're cold?" "Sharp, guarded, like you're waiting for everyone to disappoint you." "They usually do?" "Yeah, well, so do I, so we're even." Vivian laughed, real and surprised. "Is this what we're doing? Just being honest about how damaged we both are?" "Seems like a good place to start." She moved from the couch to the floor in front of his chair, sitting cross-legged, looking up at him. "Okay, honest. I haven't been in a real relationship in 6 years. The last person I dated stole proprietary code and sold it to a competitor. Before that, someone used me to get investor connections and then ghosted me when they got what they wanted. Before that, I get it, people are terrible. Are you? Probably. I'm emotionally unavailable, terrible at communicating, and still in love with a dead woman." Caleb met her eyes. "But I'm here. That has to count for something." "It does." Vivian reached up and took his hand. Her fingers were warm from holding the beer bottle. "I don't need you to be perfect, Caleb. I just need you to be honest." "I can do honest." He squeezed her hand. "I'm scared of this. I'm scared of what it means for Mia. I'm scared the media is going to destroy what little normalcy we have left. And I'm scared that I'm going to fail you the same way I feel like I failed Emma." "How did you fail her?" "I couldn't save her. I couldn't do anything except watch her die." "That's not failing. That's just being human." Caleb pulled his hand away and stood up, pacing to the window. The darkness outside was complete. No light pollution, just stars and trees and emptiness. "You don't understand. She was everything. my whole world. And when she got sick, I kept thinking if I just worked harder, found better doctors, made more money, something would change. But nothing changed. She just got worse and worse until she wasn't her anymore, and then she was gone. And you think you'll fail me the same way. I think I'm good at failing people I care about. He heard Vivian stand up behind him. Then her arms were around his waist, her forehead pressed against his back. Listen to me, she said quietly. You didn't fail your wife. You loved her. You showed up every day. You kept your promise even when it made everyone think you were crazy. That's not failing. That's the opposite of failing. Then why does it feel like I lost everything? Because you did lose everything, but you're still here. You're still trying. That takes more courage than most people ever have to find. Caleb turned around in her arms and kissed her. It was different from the parking lot kiss, not careful or tentative, but desperate and honest. She kissed him back with the same desperation, her hands fisting in his shirt, and for a few moments nothing existed except this. Two people who'd both been alone too long, finding something they hadn't known they needed. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Vivian laughed shakily. Okay, so we're doing this. Apparently. I should warn you, I'm terrible at this part. What part? The actual relationship part. I work too much. I'm controlling. I have trust issues the size of a skyscraper. And my idea of a romantic gesture is acquiring a company someone needs to impress me. That's deeply fucked up. I know. Want to back out now while you still can? Caleb kissed her again, slower this time. No. They spent the rest of the night talking and not talking, finishing the beer, feeding the fire. Vivian told him about growing up with a grandmother who'd taught her to be ruthless and never apologize. Caleb told her about the year after Emma died, when he'd seriously considered giving Mia to his sister because he wasn't sure he could be a good father anymore. Neither of them pretended to have answers. They just existed together in that small cabin in the woods, two people trying to figure out if they could be less alone together. Around midnight, Vivian fell asleep on the couch. Caleb covered her with a blanket and sat in the armchair watching her, thinking about all the ways this could go wrong and the one small chance it might go right. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in chaos management. The media attention got worse before it got better. Someone leaked Caleb's address, and reporters showed up at his house at all hours. Someone else tracked down his work schedule and showed up at job sites. His phone number got posted online, and he had to change it after the 15th person called asking for an interview. Mia handled it better than Caleb expected. She stopped caring what the other kids said when she realized her dad was dating someone famous, which apparently gave her social currency for the first time ever. She started telling elaborate stories at school about Vivian's wealth, most of which weren't true, and the kids who'd been bullying her suddenly wanted to be her friend. She told Lacey that you own a private island, Caleb said to Vivian one Friday night at the diner. They'd started meeting there again despite the attention because it felt important not to hide. Vivian smiled into her coffee. I don't, but I could buy one if it would help. Please don't encourage her. Too late. I already told her I'd take her shopping in New York. Vivian? What? She's 7. She should get to do fun things. She should get to be normal. Normal is overrated. Vivian reached across the table and took his hand. They did this now, small touches in public that made the cameras go crazy but felt necessary anyway. Besides, she's not normal anymore, neither are you. We might as well embrace it. Caleb wanted to argue, but he was too tired. Work was suffering because he kept having to deal with media bullshit. He'd lost 2 contracts because clients didn't want the publicity. Money was getting tight again, and he was too proud to ask Vivian for help. She noticed anyway. Of course she did. The Victorian project fell through, she said carefully. The one you were excited about. Who told you that? I have my sources. You mean you're having me followed? No. I mean I care about you and I pay attention. She squeezed his hand. Let me help. No. Caleb, I said no. He pulled his hand away. I'm not your charity case. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're trying to throw money at my problems. I'm trying to support you. I don't need your support. I need people to leave me alone so I can do my job. He stood up, throwing money on the table, and walked out. The cameras caught him leaving alone, Vivian sitting in the booth looking hurt and angry. By morning, the photos would be everywhere with speculation about their first fight. Caleb didn't care. He drove home and lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how long before this whole thing collapsed under its own weight. Vivian didn't call, didn't text. For 3 days there was silence, and Caleb told himself he was relieved. This proved his point. They were from different worlds. It was never going to work. On the 4th day, Mia came home from school and announced she'd been invited to a birthday party. "Whose party?" Caleb asked. "Madison's. She's in my class. The party's at the zoo." Mia was practically vibrating with excitement. "Can I go? Please?" Caleb's chest hurt. Madison was one of the kids who'd been cruel to Mia after Emma died, who'd made fun of her clothes and her lunch and the fact that her dad was weird. Now suddenly Mia was invited to her party? "I don't know, baby," he started. "Please, Dad. Everyone's going. If I don't go, they'll think I'm weird again." "You're not weird, but they think I am. And if I go to this party, maybe they'll stop thinking that." Caleb looked at his daughter, 7 years old, desperate to be normal, willing to pretend to be friends with people who'd hurt her just so she'd fit in. And he realized with horrible clarity that his relationship with Vivian had made everything worse for her, not better. "Okay," he said. "You can go." Mia threw her arms around him. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." That night, after she was asleep, Caleb called Vivian. She answered on the first ring. "Hi," she said carefully. "I'm sorry. For the other night, for being an asshole." "You weren't an asshole, you were proud. There's a difference." "Maybe, but I shouldn't have walked out." Silence for a moment, then. "I shouldn't have offered money. I know that's not what you need." "What do I need?" "The same thing I do. Someone who shows up. Someone who doesn't run when things get hard." Caleb closed his eyes. "I'm not good at that." "Neither am I, but we could try together." "Yeah, we could try." They talked for an hour about nothing and everything. About Mia's party, about Vivian's latest board crisis, about the reporters who were finally starting to lose interest as the story got old. It felt normal. As normal as anything between them could feel. "Come to New York this weekend," Vivian said suddenly. "Both of you. I want to show Mia the city." "I don't know. Please. I know it's a lot. But I want her to see that this isn't all cameras and chaos. I want her to see why I love it there." Caleb thought about his daughter, desperate to fit in, willing to go to a party thrown by someone who'd been cruel to her. Maybe what she needed wasn't to fit in. Maybe what she needed was to see that there were bigger things to be than just normal. "Okay," he said. "We'll come." The trip to New York was everything Caleb feared and nothing like he expected. Vivian sent a car to pick them up, an actual car with a driver, which made Mia's eyes go huge. The drive took 3 hours, and Mia spent the entire time with her face pressed to the window, watching the landscape change from rural to suburban to city. Vivian met them at her penthouse. It was exactly as absurd as Caleb had imagined. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture that probably cost more than his truck, art on the walls that looked like it belonged in museums. Mia walked around touching everything carefully, like she might break something just by breathing on it. "Your house is huge," she announced. "It's too big," Vivian said. "I mostly live in 3 rooms and ignore the rest." "Can I see your closet?" Vivian laughed. "Come on." She led Mia down a hallway while Caleb stood in the living room feeling wildly out of place. The city stretched out below, a million lights in the growing darkness. He could see other buildings, other lives, all stacked on top of each other in ways that made his small town feel like another planet. "Dad!" Mia's voice echoed from somewhere deep in the apartment. "She has a chandelier in her bathroom." Caleb followed the sound and found them in a bedroom that was bigger than his entire house. Mia was trying on a scarf that probably cost a month's rent, dancing in front of a mirror. Vivian was sitting on the bed, watching her with an expression Caleb couldn't quite read. "She's never seen anything like this," Caleb said quietly. "Neither have I, really." Vivian stood up, walked to where he was leaning against the doorframe. "I bought this place 5 years ago because I was supposed to. because successful people have penthouses. But I've never brought anyone here except business associates. Why bring us? Because I wanted you to see this part of my life. The real part, not the part that ends up in magazines. She looked at Mia, still spinning in front of the mirror, and because I wanted her to see that she can be anything, that coming from a small town doesn't mean she has to stay small. Something in Caleb's chest cracked open. He pulled Vivian close and kissed her forehead. Thank you. Motbot. That weekend, Vivian showed them New York the way someone who actually lived there would. No tourist traps, no Broadway shows. Instead, they went to a dumpling place in Chinatown where Vivian knew the owner. They walked through Central Park and fed the ducks. They went to a bookstore that was 3 stories tall, and Vivian bought Mia an armload of books without asking prices. On Saturday night, they ordered pizza and ate it on the floor of Vivian's living room while Mia asked 1,000 questions about being rich. Vivian answered everyone honestly, not sugarcoating the loneliness or the pressure or the way money made some things easier and others infinitely harder. Do you ever wish you were normal? Mia asked. Every day, Vivian said. But then I remember normal is just what most people are, not what everyone has to be. Dad says being different is okay. Your dad's right. Mia looked between them. Are you going to get married? Caleb choked on his pizza. Vivian's eyes went wide. We just started dating. But you're old, Mia said seriously. You should probably hurry up. I'm 30, Vivian said. That's old. Jesus, kid, Caleb managed. Can we not plan my wedding right now? But Mia just shrugged and went back to her pizza, and Caleb caught Vivian's eye across the coffee table. She was trying not to smile. Later, after Mia was asleep in the guest room, Caleb and Vivian stood at the windows looking out at the city. She leaned against him, and he wrapped his arms around her waist. Thank you for this weekend, he said. Thank you for coming. Mia's never been this happy. What about you? Caleb thought about it, about the fear that had been his constant companion for 2 years, about the grief that still ambushed him at random moments, about how terrifying it was to care about someone again. I'm getting there, he said finally. They stood there in the darkness, the city alive below them, and Caleb let himself believe for the first time that maybe moving forward didn't mean leaving Emma behind. Maybe it just meant making room for more life in the space she'd left. On Sunday, they drove home. Mia fell asleep in the back seat halfway there, and Caleb and Vivian talked quietly in the front. I have to go to London next week, Vivian said. Board meeting with our European division. I'll be gone for 10 days. Caleb's stomach dropped. 10 days? I know, it's terrible timing, but I can't get out of it. It's fine, we'll be fine. Will you? She looked at him. Because we've never been apart this long, not since we started. Dating, you can say it. Dating, she agreed. It still sounds weird. Everything about us is weird. True. She reached over and took his hand, but I don't want you to freak out while I'm gone. I don't want you to decide this is too hard and walk away. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Caleb squeezed her hand. Promise. But as they drove back to his small town, past bare trees and early winter darkness, he felt the familiar pull of fear trying to drag him back to safety, back to the simple grief of Friday night dinners alone, back to a life where nothing changed because nothing was allowed to. He looked at Mia sleeping in the rearview mirror, at Vivian beside him, her hand in his, and he made himself keep the promise before he'd had time to break it. Vivian left for London on a Tuesday morning. Caleb didn't go to the airport with her, too public, too many cameras, but she called him from the gate while waiting to board. Mia's still asleep, Caleb said, standing in his kitchen with coffee he wasn't drinking. I would have woken her up if I'd known you were calling. Don't. Let her sleep. I just wanted to hear your voice before I got on the plane. It's the same voice you heard last night. I know. A pause. Background announcements echoing behind her. I'm nervous. About London? About leaving. About 10 days feeling like forever. About coming back and you having decided this was all a mistake. Caleb leaned against the counter, closing his eyes. I'm not going to decide that. You don't know that. Yeah, I do, because I'm tired of being scared of everything. He opened his eyes, stared at the coffee going cold in his hand. So go to London, destroy your board meeting. Come back and we'll figure out the next impossible thing together. He could hear her smile through the phone. Okay, okay. I have to board. I'll call you when I land. Be safe. She hung up. Caleb stood in his kitchen for a long time after, listening to the house settle around him, feeling the absence of someone who'd only been in his life for 3 months, but had somehow become essential. The first 3 days were fine. Vivian called twice a day, morning in London, evening for Caleb. They talked about nothing important. Mia's homework, the weather. A client Vivian was trying to close a deal with who kept changing his demands. It felt normal, or as normal as anything between them could feel. On the fourth day, Mia came home from school crying. Caleb was in the garage trying to fix a table saw that kept throwing the belt when he heard the front door slam. He found her in her room, face down on her bed, shoulders shaking. Hey, hey! What happened? He sat on the edge of the bed, hand on her back. Did someone hurt you? Mia shook her head, but she couldn't stop crying long enough to talk. Caleb just sat there, waiting it out the way he'd learned to do. Finally, she rolled over and looked at him with red, puffy eyes. Madison uninvited me to her party. Caleb's jaw tightened. Why? Because her mom said I'm not a good influence. Because of you and Vivian and all the pictures. Fresh tears spilled down her face. She said, I think I'm special now because my dad's dating someone rich, and that makes the other kids uncomfortable. That's bullshit. Dad. No, I'm serious. That's adult bullshit wrapped up in a 7-year-old's birthday party. Caleb pulled Mia up into his lap, even though she was getting too big for it. Madison's mom is an idiot, and Madison is learning to be one too. You don't need friends like that. But everyone was going to be there. Now they're all going to have fun without me. Then they're not your real friends. What did your term do? I don't have any real friends. Mia's voice cracked. Everyone thinks I'm weird. They thought I was weird when Mom died, and then they thought I was weird because you were sad all the time. And now they think I'm weird because Vivian is famous. I'm always going to be the weird kid. Caleb felt something crack inside his chest. He'd spent 2 years trying to protect Mia from his grief, from his choices, from the consequences of promises he'd made. And she'd suffered for all of it anyway. I'm sorry, he said quietly. This is my fault. It's not. It is. I made choices that made your life harder. The diner thing. Vivian. All of it. I was so worried about keeping my promise to your mom that I forgot you needed a dad who could just be normal. Mia pulled back to look at him. Her face was splotchy and tear-stained, but her expression was serious. I don't want you to be normal. Normal dads are boring. Boring might be better than weird. No. She shook her head firmly. Normal dads forget about their wives. They forget about promises. You didn't forget Mom. You kept loving her even when everyone said to stop. That's not weird. That's just love. Caleb couldn't speak. He just held his daughter and tried not to cry himself, because one of them needed to hold it together, and it was supposed to be him. Can I tell you something? Mia said after a while. Anything. I like Vivian a lot. And I know you're scared I don't because of Mom, but I do. She's different from Mom, but that's okay. Mom would have wanted you to be happy again. How do you know that? Because before she died, she told me. Mia's voice got quiet. She said you were going to be sad for a long time, but someday you'd meet someone new, and I should be nice to them because loving you was going to be hard work. Caleb's breath caught. She said that? Yeah, I was only 5, so I didn't really get it, but I get it now. Mia looked at him seriously. You're kind of a lot, Dad. Despite everything, Caleb laughed. Yeah, I am. But Vivian likes you anyway, so she must be pretty special. She is. Then don't mess it up because you're scared. Caleb pulled Mia close again, marveling at when his daughter had become wiser than him. I'll try not to. That night, after Mia was asleep, Caleb called Vivian. It was early morning in London, and she sounded exhausted. Bad night? He asked. Meeting ran until 3 a.m. Then I couldn't sleep. Then I had another meeting at 7. He could hear her moving around, water running. How are things there? Mia got uninvited from a birthday party. What? Why? Caleb told her the whole story. When he finished, Vivian was silent for a long moment. Then, give me the mom's name. Why? Oh, because I'm going to destroy her life. Vivian, I'm kidding, mostly. But seriously, what kind of adult punishes a 7-year-old for her father's choices? The same kind who thinks dating a billionaire makes us think we're better than everyone else. But you don't think that. No, but she doesn't know that. She just sees the headlines and makes assumptions. Caleb rubbed his face. Maybe she's right. Maybe this whole thing is making Mia's life worse. Don't do that. Do what? Use Mia as an excuse to run away. If you want out, say it. But don't hide behind your daughter. Caleb bristled. I'm not hiding. Aren't you? Every time things get hard, you find a reason why this can't work. First it was the media. Then it was the money. Now it's Mia. What's next? That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's true. Vivian's voice softened. I know you're scared. I am too. But we can't keep looking for exits every time things get difficult. I'm not looking for exits. I'm trying to protect my kid. From what? From seeing her father happy? From learning that love is worth fighting for even when it's complicated? From getting hurt when this inevitably falls apart? Silence stretched between them across 4,000 miles. Finally, Vivian spoke, her voice tight. Is that what you think is going to happen? That this falls apart? I don't know, Caleb said honestly. I don't know how to make this work. We live in different worlds. You fly to London for board meetings. I fix broken houses for people who can barely afford to pay me. Your life is chaos and pressure and expectations I can't even imagine. Mine is real, Vivian interrupted. Your life is real, and that's what I need. That's what keeps me from disappearing into all the bullshit. Her voice cracked slightly. But if you don't want this, if you can't see a way forward, then tell me now. Because I can't do another 6 days wondering if you're going to be there when I get back. Caleb closed his eyes. He thought about Emma, about the promise he'd made to keep living. He thought about Mia, who was wise enough at 7 to know that being scared wasn't a good enough reason to stop trying. He thought about Vivian, sharp and complicated and somehow exactly what he needed, even though he'd never asked for it. I'll be here, he said quietly. When you get back, I'll be here. Promise? Yeah, I promise. He could hear her exhale, long and shaky. Okay, good. Asi yo mi pasin que. They talked for another hour, until Vivian had to go to her next meeting and Caleb had to get ready for work. When they hung up, Caleb sat in the darkness of his bedroom and made himself believe the promise he'd just made. The next day, Caleb got a call from a lawyer's office in the city. Mr. Hayes? The voice was professional, female, vaguely threatening in the way lawyers always sounded. This is Margaret Chen from Whitmore & Associates. I'm calling regarding a business matter related to your contracting work. Caleb's stomach dropped. What business matter? We represent several property development firms in the region. One of my clients is interested in discussing a potential partnership with you for a residential restoration project. Would you be available for a meeting next Tuesday? I don't do partnerships. I'm a one-man operation. I understand. However, the scope of this project would require additional resources, and my client believes your particular expertise would be valuable. The meeting would just be exploratory. No commitments required. Something felt off. Caleb had been in construction long enough to know when someone was selling him something, and this had all the hallmarks of a pitch. Who's your client? He asked. Sterling Development Group. Caleb's hand tightened on the phone. Let me guess. Vivian Sterling's company. A pause. Ms. Sterling is the founder and CEO, yes. But this is a legitimate business opportunity, Mr. Hayes. If you'd prefer not to pursue it based on your personal relationship, I understand. However, I'd encourage you to at least review the proposal. Send it over. I'll look at it. Excellent. I'll have the materials couriered to you by end of day. She hung up. Caleb sat in his truck outside the hardware store, staring at his phone, trying to decide if he was angry or something else. The proposal arrived at 6 p.m., delivered by a courier service that probably cost more than Caleb's monthly grocery bill. He made Mia dinner, got her started on homework, then sat at the kitchen table and opened the envelope. Inside was a professionally bound document outlining a project to restore an entire neighborhood of historic homes that had fallen into disrepair. The budget was substantial, the timeline was aggressive, and the proposal explicitly named Caleb as the preferred contractor to lead the restoration team. There was a sticky note on the front page in handwriting he recognized. I know you're going to be angry about this. Be angry, but read it first. This isn't charity, it's business. You're the best restoration contractor I've ever seen, and this project needs someone who actually gives a shit about the work. If you want it, it's yours. If you don't, no hard feelings. V. Caleb read through this proposal twice. It was legitimate. The project made sense. The budget was fair, maybe even conservative, and taking it would solve his money problems for at least the next 2 years. But it was also clearly Vivian trying to help him without calling it help. He called her. It was late in London, but she answered immediately. You read it? She asked. I read it. And I don't know if I should be grateful or furious. Both are valid. He could hear her moving around, probably pacing. But before you decide, let me explain. This project has been in development for 6 months. It's not something I created because you lost the Victorian job. The developer actually approached me 3 weeks ago asking if I knew anyone who could handle historic restoration with limited budget flexibility. I thought of you immediately, but I knew you'd think I was interfering, so I didn't say anything. 3 weeks ago, we were barely speaking. I know, but you were still the best person for the job. She paused. This is real, Caleb. It's not a handout. If you take it and fuck it up, you're out and my company loses money. If you take it and do good work, everyone wins. That's just business. Business between people who are dating is complicated. Everything about us is complicated. At least this complication comes with a paycheck. Caleb laughed despite himself. That's a terrible sales pitch. I know. I'm better at hostile takeovers than gentle persuasion. Her voice softened. But seriously, read through it. Talk to the lawyer. Make sure it's something you actually want. And if it's not, turn it down. I'll survive the disappointment. Will you? Probably not, but I'll pretend I did for your benefit. They talked for a while longer about the project, about Mia, about nothing important. When they hung up, Caleb sat at his table and read through the proposal a third time, trying to see it objectively, trying to separate the opportunity from the woman offering it. By midnight, he'd made his decision. He called the lawyer first thing Friday morning and accepted. The next week passed in a blur of contract negotiations and project planning. Caleb met with architects, structural engineers, and the development team. Everyone treated him like a professional, not like Vivian Sterling's boyfriend, which helped. The project was massive, 15 houses in various states of decay, all needing to be restored to historical accuracy while meeting modern building codes. It was exactly the kind of work Caleb loved, and exactly the kind of challenge he needed. Mia noticed the change in him immediately. You're humming, she said one morning while he made breakfast. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. You've been humming all week. You only hum when you're happy. I hum lots of times. Not since Mom died. Mia poured herself orange juice, studying him. Does this mean you're not sad anymore? Caleb thought about that. No, I'm still sad sometimes. But I'm other things too now. Like what? Busy, excited, nervous. He flipped her pancakes. Maybe a little bit happy. Because of the new job or because of Vivian? Both. Mia smiled into her orange juice. Good. Vivian landed back in New York on Sunday afternoon. She called from the car service, driving her home, voice rough with exhaustion and jet lag. I'm back, she said. How was the flight? Long. Terrible. The man next to me snored for 8 hours. She paused. I missed you. Yeah? Don't sound so surprised. Us. I'm not. Caleb stopped, searching for words. I missed you too. Good, because I'm coming up there tomorrow after I handle some crisis at the office. Can you take the day off? I'm my own boss now. I can take whatever days I want. Look at you, already abusing your power. Learned from the best. She laughed. I'll be there around noon. Just you. I want you all to myself for at least a few hours before I have to share you with your daughter. She's going to be pissed. She'll survive. I'll take her shopping next weekend to make up for it. You're going to spoil her. That's the plan. They hung up. Caleb spent the rest of Sunday cleaning his house in a way he hadn't bothered with in years. He changed the sheets, scrubbed the bathroom, threw out expired food from the fridge. Mia watched this whole production with obvious amusement. You really like her, she said. I do. Like her? Caleb stopped mid-scrub of the kitchen counter. I don't know, maybe. You should tell her. It's complicated. Everything's complicated. Mia went back to her book. Doesn't mean you shouldn't say it. Monday morning, Caleb dropped Mia at school and drove home with his nerves humming. He hadn't felt this way since he was 17 and taking Emma to prom. The anticipation, the fear, the desperate hope that he wasn't about to fuck everything up. Vivian arrived at 12:30 in her black SUV. She got out wearing jeans and a sweater and sunglasses that probably cost more than Caleb's new budget for materials, and she looked exhausted and beautiful and real. Caleb met her halfway across his driveway and kissed her. She made a small surprised sound, then kissed him back, her hands fisting in his jacket. Hi, she said when they broke apart. Hi yourself. I'm really tired. I can see that. I might fall asleep on your couch. That's fine. And I probably smell like airplane. I don't care. She smiled, that real smile he'd learned to need, and let him lead her inside. His house looked small with her in it, shabby. All the flaws he'd stopped noticing became obvious when seen through someone else's eyes. But Vivian just dropped her bag by the door, kicked off her shoes, and looked around like she was home. I like it here, she said. It's a disaster. It's real. Your house, I mean. It's actually lived in. Mine looks like a museum. She walked to the couch and dropped onto it with a sigh. Sit with me. Caleb sat. Vivian immediately curled into his side, head on his shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her. They sat like that for a long time, not talking, just existing together. I signed the contract, Caleb said finally. I know. Margaret called me. You could have told me yourself. I wanted you to tell me. Wanted to know if you were excited or resentful. She tilted her head to look up at him. Which is it? Excited, terrified, grateful. All of it. Good. Because I meant what I said. This isn't charity. You're legitimately the best person for this job. How do you know? You've never seen my work. Yes, I have. I drove past 3 of your renovation projects, took photos, had my team analyze them against comparable work in the region. She said it casually, like industrial-level stalking was normal. You're meticulous. You care about historical accuracy, and you're willing to fight with clients who want to cut corners. That's rare. You're insane. I'm thorough. There's a difference. She closed her eyes, settling deeper into his shoulder. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for offering. They fell into comfortable silence. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Inside, the heater kicked on with its familiar clank. Vivian's breathing slowed, and Caleb realized she'd fallen asleep. He sat there holding her, this woman who'd crashed into his life and refused to leave even when it would have been easier for both of them. This woman who challenged him and supported him and somehow made him want to be better without making him feel inadequate. Mia had been right. He did love her, or was falling into it, or had already fallen and was just now admitting it. The specifics didn't matter. What mattered was that for the first time since Emma died, Caleb could imagine a future that didn't feel like just survival. Vivian woke up an hour later, disoriented and apologetic. I fell asleep. I noticed. Sorry, I'm terrible company when I'm jet-lagged. You're perfect company. He said it without thinking, then froze, waiting for her reaction. Vivian smiled. Liar. But I appreciate it. She sat up, stretching. What time do you pick up Mia? 3:30. So we have 2 hours. Give or take. Want to show me around town? I've only ever seen the diner. Caleb laughed. There's not much to show. It's basically a main street and a lot of nothing. Then show me the nothing. So he did. They drove through town in his truck, Vivian taking in everything like it was fascinating instead of mundane. He showed her the hardware store where he bought supplies, the elementary school where Mia was currently learning about fractions, the park where Emma used to take Mia when she was little. You miss her, Vivian said quietly when Caleb told her about Emma and the park. Every day. But it's different now. How? It doesn't hurt as much. Or maybe it hurts the same, but I'm stronger so I can carry it better. He glanced at her. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does. They drove to the edge of town, where development stopped and farmland began. Caleb pulled over on the side of the road, and they got out to look at the view, miles of empty fields under gray November sky, everything dormant and waiting for spring. It's beautiful, Vivian said. It's boring? No, it's peaceful. There's a difference. She leaned against the truck beside him. I spend my whole life moving at 100 miles an hour. Always another meeting, another crisis, another decision that affects thousands of people. But here, she gestured at the empty landscape. Here nothing's urgent, nothing's catastrophic. Things just exist. You could have this, Caleb said, if you wanted. You have enough money to walk away whenever you want. I know, but I can't. Why not? Because I spent my entire 20s building something that matters. Because walking away would mean all those 18-hour days meant nothing. Because... She stopped, searching for words. Because I don't know who I am if I'm not the CEO. That's been my entire identity for so long that losing it would be like losing myself. That sounds exhausting. Oh, it is. She looked at him. But being here with you, it reminds me there's more to life than just work. That I can be someone other than Vivian Sterling, ruthless billionaire. Who are you then? I don't know yet, but I'd like to find out. Caleb pulled her close and kissed her, slow and deep, trying to communicate everything he couldn't find words for. When they broke apart, Vivian was smiling. We should probably head back, she said, before you miss pickup time and Mia thinks I kidnapped you. She'd probably be fine with it. Still, I want to see her. I brought her something from London. They drove back into town. Caleb picked up Mia from school, and she threw her arms around Vivian before even saying hello to Caleb. They went back to the house, and Vivian pulled out a bag full of books from British authors and weird candy that Mia immediately devoured. That night, the three of them ordered Chinese food and ate it sitting on the living room floor, while Mia told elaborate stories about everything Vivian had missed while she was gone. Vivian listened like every word was important, asking questions and laughing at the right moments, and Caleb watched them together and felt his chest expand with something that might have been hope. Later, after Mia was in bed, Vivian and Caleb sat on the porch in the cold, wrapped in blankets, drinking beer and watching the stars. I could get used to this, Vivian said. Cheap beer and freezing temperatures? Peace, quiet, you. She looked at him. I know we haven't talked about what this is, about where it's going, but I need you to know I'm not playing around here. This isn't some temporary thing for me. What is it then? I don't know, but I want to find out. She took his hand. Do you? Caleb thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. The empty plates at the diner, the media circus, the fights and reconciliations, the way she'd somehow become essential to his daughter's happiness and his own. Yeah, he said, I do. They sat there in the darkness, holding hands like teenagers, and for the first time in 2 years, Caleb let himself believe that maybe promises weren't just about the past. Maybe they could be about the future too. 3 weeks before Christmas, Mia got sick. It started small. A cough that wouldn't quit, a fever that spiked at night and disappeared by morning. Caleb kept her home from school, made soup she barely touched, and told himself it was just a cold. Kids got colds. It wasn't anything to panic about. But on the third night, he woke to the sound of her coughing so hard she couldn't catch her breath. He ran to her room and found her sitting up in bed, gasping, her lips tinged with blue in the dim glow of her nightlight. The drive to the hospital was 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. Mia lay in the passenger seat wrapped in blankets, her breathing shallow and ragged. and Caleb drove with one hand on the wheel and one hand on her chest, feeling it rise and fall too fast, too weak. "Stay with me, baby," he kept saying. "Just stay with me." The ER took her immediately. Pneumonia, they said. Severe. Her oxygen levels were critical. They hooked her up to machines and IV lines and oxygen masks, and all Caleb could do was stand there watching his daughter disappear behind equipment that was supposed to save her, but only made her look smaller. He called Vivian from the hallway outside Mia's room at 2 in the morning, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the phone. "Something's wrong with Mia," he said when she answered. His voice cracked. "Really wrong." "What hospital?" "County General. But you don't have to—" "I'm already getting dressed. I'll be there in 90 minutes. She hung up before he could argue. Caleb went back into Mia's room and sat in the chair beside her bed. A nurse came in every 20 minutes to check vitals, adjust medications, write numbers on a chart that Caleb couldn't interpret. He held Mia's hand and watched her chest rise and fall with mechanical assistance, and tried not to think about Emma in a different hospital bed, hooked to different machines, dying anyway despite everything medical science could do. Vivian arrived at 3:47 a.m., still wearing yesterday's makeup, her hair pulled back in a messy knot, her expensive coat thrown over pajama pants and a sweatshirt. She took one look at Caleb and seemed to understand everything without him having to explain. "How is she?" Vivian asked. "They say she's stable, that the antibiotics are working, that she'll be fine." Caleb's voice was flat. "They said the same things about Emma." Vivian sat in the chair next to his. "This isn't Emma, but how do you know?" "Because Mia is 7 years old and strong and getting treatment early. Because pneumonia isn't brain cancer. Because you got her here in time." She took his hand. "She's going to be okay." "You can't promise that." "No, but I can sit here with you until we know for sure." They stayed like that through the rest of the night, taking turns holding Mia's hand, dozing in uncomfortable chairs, drinking terrible hospital coffee. When morning came and the doctors made their rounds, they confirmed what Vivian had said. Mia was responding to treatment. Her oxygen levels were improving. She'd probably be discharged in 3 or 4 days. Caleb felt the terror that had been crushing his chest loosen just slightly, enough to breathe, enough to think about something other than losing everyone he loved. On the second day, a hospital administrator appeared in Mia's doorway. She was a thin woman with apologetic eyes and a manila folder clutched against her chest like armor. "Mr. Hayes, could I speak with you in the hallway?" Caleb's stomach dropped. He knew what this conversation was before she said a word. He followed her into the corridor, where she opened the folder and showed him numbers that didn't make sense until they did. "Your insurance covered the emergency admission," she explained. "But the extended stay and specialized medications exceed your policy limits. The current balance is $23,000. The number hit him like a physical blow. $23,000. He had maybe $1,500 in savings. The new project wouldn't pay out for another month. He was fucked. "We have payment plans," the administrator continued, "or you can apply for financial hardship assistance." "I'll figure it out," Caleb said, even though he had no idea how. She handed him paperwork and left. Caleb stood in the hallway staring at the numbers, trying to do math that wouldn't work no matter how many times he rearranged it. He could take out a loan, could max out credit cards that were already close to their limits, could call his sister and beg for money he'd never be able to pay back. How much? He turned. Vivian was standing behind him, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "It's handled," Caleb said. "How much, Caleb?" $23,000. "But I said it's handled. Let me pay it." "No." "Why not? I have the money. You don't. This is basic math." "It's not about math." Caleb folded the paperwork and shoved it in his back pocket. "I take care of my daughter. That's how this works." "Even if taking care of her means drowning in debt you can't afford?" "If that's what it takes, yeah." Vivian's expression hardened. "That's not noble. That's stupid." "Watch it." "No, you watch it. Your daughter is in a hospital bed fighting pneumonia, and you're so wrapped up in your pride that you'd rather destroy yourself financially than accept help from someone who loves you. The hallway went silent. Caleb stared at her, the words echoing in his head. Someone who loves you. She'd said it like it was simple, like loving him wasn't complicated or terrifying or something that required 1,000 qualifications. Don't do that, he said quietly. Do what? No. Say you love me when we're fighting about money. That's not fair. I'm not fighting about money. I'm fighting about you being too stubborn to see that accepting help isn't the same as failing. She stepped closer. I love you. I love Mia, and I have enough money to pay this bill 50 times over without even noticing it's gone. So let me help. And then what? I owe you? We're not equals anymore because you bailed me out? Is that what you think would happen? I don't know. But I know I've spent my entire adult life taking care of myself and my family, and the second I let someone else do it, everything changes. Vivian's expression softened. Yeah, it does change. That's what happens when you let people in. They help carry things. They share the weight. That's not weakness, Caleb. That's just love. He wanted to argue, wanted to explain all the ways accepting her money would compromise his independence, would make him dependent on someone who could leave whenever she got tired of slumming it in his small-town life. But standing there in the hospital hallway, exhausted and terrified and so fucking tired of carrying everything alone, he couldn't find the words. Okay, he said finally. You can pay it, but I'm paying you back. We'll figure it out. I'm serious, Vivian. I know you are. And we'll figure it out. She took his hand. Together. Vivian paid the bill that afternoon. She walked into the administrative office and handed over a credit card like $23,000 was the same as 23. The administrator's eyes went wide when she processed the payment, and Vivian shut down whatever comment was coming with a look that could have frozen fire. When she came back to Mia's room, Caleb was sitting beside the bed, reading to his daughter from a book about dragons. Mia was awake now, breathing easier, color returning to her face. She smiled when Vivian walked in. Did you bring me a present? Mia asked. I paid your hospital bill. Does that count? That's a boring present. Fair enough. I'll bring you something better tomorrow. Mia nodded, satisfied, and went back to listening to Caleb read. Vivian sat in the other chair and watched them, and Caleb felt something shift in his chest. Some wall he'd been maintaining crumbled, the wall that said he had to do everything alone, that accepting help was admitting defeat, that love was something you earned rather than something you received. That night, after Mia had fallen asleep and the hospital settled into its quiet nighttime rhythm, Caleb and Vivian sat in the uncomfortable chairs and talked in low voices. I meant what I said earlier, Vivian told him, about loving you. I know. Do you feel the same way? Caleb thought about in the past 4 months. About the way Vivian had shown up every Friday even when it would have been easier to walk away. About the way she'd dropped everything to be here when Mia got sick. About the way she'd fought him on the money, not because she wanted control, but because she couldn't stand watching him suffer when she could help. Yeah, he said. I love you too. Vivian's smile was small and real. Good, because that would have been really awkward otherwise. Still might be awkward. Probably. We're not exactly normal. Normal's overrated. That's what I keep telling my board. She reached over and took his hand. They think I've lost my mind. By the way, dating a small-town carpenter, spending half my time 40 miles from headquarters. They're convinced you're some kind of con artist after my money. Am I? If you are, you're terrible at it. A real con artist would have taken the money without arguing. Good point. They sat there in this darkness, holding hands like teenagers, while machines beeped and nurses made their rounds and Mia slept peacefully for the first time in days. Caleb looked at his daughter, alive, breathing, getting better, and felt gratitude so overwhelming it hurt. Thank you, he said to Vivian, for being here, for helping, for everything. You don't have to thank me. Yeah, I do. Okay then. You're welcome. She squeezed his hand. But you should know I'm not going anywhere, even when things get hard, even when you try to push me away because you're scared. I'm staying. That's a big promise. I keep my promises. So do I, Caleb said, thinking about Emma, about the 2 years of Friday dinners, about the way some promises became anchors and others became wings. So do I, at 38. Mia came home 4 days later with a prescription for antibiotics and instructions to rest. Caleb set her up on the couch with blankets and books and a bell to ring if she needed anything. Vivian stayed for the next week, working remotely from the kitchen table while Caleb checked on Mia every 15 minutes, until Vivian finally told him to stop hovering or she'd physically remove him from the house. "She's fine," Vivian said on the third day, watching Caleb check Mia's forehead for fever again. The doctor cleared her. "I know, but I'm still checking. You're going to drive yourself crazy." "Probably." Vivian stood up and pulled him outside to the porch. The December air was cold enough to sting, but the sun was out for the first time in days. They sat on the steps, and Vivian wrapped a blanket around both of them. "You can't protect her from everything," she said quietly. "Bad things are going to happen. She'll get sick again. She'll get hurt. She'll have her heart broken. That's just life." "I know that." "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're trying to control every variable so nothing bad can ever touch her. Is that wrong?" "Well, it's impossible." Vivian leaned against him. "The best you can do is be there when things go wrong. Show her that scary things happen, but you survive them. That love doesn't disappear when life gets hard." Caleb thought about Emma, about watching her die and being unable to stop it, about the 2 years he'd spent trying to protect Mia from everything painful, including his own grief, about how that protection had actually just been isolation. "I don't know how to stop being afraid, Mesa," he admitted. "You don't stop, you just do things anyway." She took his hand. "Like letting me pay that bill even though it terrified you. Like falling in love with me even though you're convinced I'll leave. Like building a life that isn't just survival. When did you get so wise?" "When I met you and realized I'd been doing the same thing, hiding behind work because it was safer than risking connection." She smiled. "We're a matched set of emotionally damaged idiots." "Hey, that's romantic." "I thought so." They sat there until the cold drove them inside, where Mia was reading and looking significantly healthier. She glanced up when they came in. "Were you guys talking about me?" she asked. "Always," Caleb said. "Good. I like being the center of attention." That Friday, for the first time in 3 weeks, Caleb went to the diner. He'd been avoiding it during Mia's illness, too caught up in crisis to think about rituals. But as 6 o'clock approached, he felt the familiar pull, the need to show up, to keep the promise he'd been keeping for 2 years. May looked surprised when he walked through the door alone at 6:15. "Haven't seen you in a while," she said, already reaching for the coffee pot. "Been dealing with some stuff." "Heard about your daughter. She okay?" "She's good. Home now." May poured coffee without being asked. "You eating alone tonight?" Caleb looked at his usual booth, at the empty seat across from where he'd sat every Friday for 2 years, ordering dinners for ghosts, keeping promises that had become heavier than he'd intended. "Yeah," he said. "Just me." He sat down. May brought the menu he'd memorized years ago. "Same as always?" Caleb opened his mouth to say yes, then stopped. He thought about Mia in the hospital bed, about Vivian sitting beside him through the worst night, about the way he'd spent 2 years honoring Emma by refusing to fully live. "Just one plate tonight," he said. "The meatloaf, and maybe some pie after." May's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes, something like relief. "Apple or cherry?" "Apple, with ice cream." "Coming up." She walked away. Caleb sat in the booth and looked at the empty seat across from him. For 2 years, that seat had represented a promise, a memorial, a way of keeping Emma alive in the only way he knew how. But Emma hadn't asked him to live in permanent memorial mode. She'd asked him to keep coming to their favorite place, to not let grief turn everything they'd loved into something sad. She'd asked him to keep living, and living meant making space for new people, new love, new promises that didn't erase the old ones but existed alongside them. May brought his dinner, one plate, just for him. Caleb ate slowly, actually tasting the food for the first time in months. When he finished, May brought the pie, warm apple with vanilla ice cream melting into the crust. "On the house," she said. "You don't have to do that." I know, but you've been coming here for 2 years, ordering food you barely touch. Figured you earned some pie. She started to walk away, then turned back. That woman, the one with all the money, she's good for you. Yeah? Yeah, you smile now. Didn't used to. May left him with his pie. Caleb ate it slowly, letting himself feel something other than heavy. When he paid and left, he looked back at his booth one more time. The table was empty, clean, ready for the next person. He drove home feeling lighter than he had in 2 years. Christmas came fast. Mia was fully recovered, back to her normal energetic self, already making elaborate lists of presents she wanted. Vivian spent more and more time at the house until it stopped being visits and started being life. She kept a toothbrush in the bathroom, clothes in Caleb's closet, her laptop set up permanently on the kitchen table. They still hadn't defined what they were doing, still hadn't had the conversation about future plans or long-term commitment. They just existed together day by day, figuring it out as they went. On Christmas Eve, Mia announced she wanted to go to the diner. Why? Caleb asked. Because that's where you and Vivian met. I want to see it. Want to sit at your table and understand the story. Shit. So they went, the three of them, driving through the cold December night to May's diner. The parking lot was mostly empty. Most people were home with family tonight. May was behind the counter, and her face softened when she saw them walk in together. Merry Christmas, she said. Merry Christmas, May. Caleb gestured to Mia. This is my daughter. She wanted to see the famous diner. It's not famous, May said, but she was smiling. It's just old. She seated them in Caleb's usual booth. Mia bounced with excitement, looking around like the place was magical instead of just a small-town diner with cracked vinyl and fluorescent lights that hummed. This is where you always sat? Mia asked. Every Friday for 2 years. And Mom used to come here with you? Before she got sick, yeah. This was our place. Mia was quiet for a moment, running her hand over the table surface. I wish I remembered her better. Caleb's chest tightened. You were only 5 when she died. It's okay that some things are fuzzy. But I don't want to forget her. You won't, Vivian said quietly. Your dad's been keeping her memory alive this whole time, and now we get to keep it alive together. May came to take their order. She looked at the three of them and something in her expression shifted. 3 plates? 3 plates, Caleb confirmed. Then he paused. Actually, 4. 1 extra. May's eyebrows rose slightly, but she just nodded and wrote it down. When she brought the food, she set 3 plates in front of them and 1 at the edge of the table. A small memorial that didn't dominate but didn't disappear either. Mia looked at the 4th plate. Is that for Mom? Yeah. Can I put something next to it? Of course. Mia reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small plastic flower, the kind kids made in art class. She set it carefully beside the plate, her face serious. I made this last week. I was going to put it on Mom's grave, but I think she'd like it here better, where you were sad but now you're happy again. Caleb couldn't speak. He just pulled Mia close and held her while Vivian looked away, blinking hard. They ate dinner together, the 3 of them plus the memory of the woman who'd set everything in motion. It felt right. Not perfect, nothing ever was, but real and honest and full of the kind of love that survived loss. After they finished, Mia asked if she could walk around. May gave her a cookie and let her explore behind the counter, showing her the ancient cash register and the menu board that hadn't been updated since 1987. Caleb and Vivian stayed at the table, their hands linked across the scarred surface. I've been thinking, Vivian said. Should I be worried? Probably. She smiled. My lease on the penthouse is up in March. I was thinking about not renewing it. Caleb's heart rate kicked up. Where would you live? I was hoping you'd have some suggestions. She met his eyes. I spend more time here than anywhere else. Every time I leave to go back to the city, it feels wrong, like I'm leaving home. You want to move here. I want to move in with you. If you'll have me, I know it's fast. I know we haven't even been together 6 months, but this feels right, and I'm tired of pretending it doesn't. Caleb stared at her. This woman who'd walked into his life during a snowstorm and refused to leave even when it would have been easier. This woman who'd paid his daughter's hospital bills and sat through the worst nights, and somehow made him believe that happiness wasn't betrayal. Yeah, he said. Move in. Yeah, Mia's going to lose her mind. What about you? I'm pretty happy about it too. Vivian laughed, relieved and bright. Good, because I already started looking at office space in town. Figured I should probably have somewhere to work that isn't your kitchen table. You're impossible. You love me anyway. Yeah, I really do. Yet. They drove home through the Christmas Eve darkness, Mia chattering in the back seat about presents and cookies and whether they could get a dog now that Vivian was staying. Caleb drove with one hand on the wheel and one hand holding Vivian's, and he thought about promises. The promise he'd made to Emma to keep living. The promise he'd kept for 2 years by showing up every Friday. The promise he was making now to Vivian and Mia and himself, to build something new without erasing what came before. The restoration project started in January. Caleb hired a small crew, bought equipment, and threw himself into work he actually cared about. The first house was a disaster. Rotted floors, collapsed ceilings, walls that needed to be rebuilt from studs. But underneath the decay was craftsmanship worth saving, history worth honoring. It reminded him of himself in a way. Something that looked broken on the surface but was still structurally sound, still worth the effort to restore. Vivian officially moved in March. She sold the penthouse, kept a small apartment in the city for business trips, and brought her life to the small house with the drafty windows and the foundation Caleb was still working on fixing. She and Mia fought over bathroom space and closet shelves. She learned to cook meals that didn't come from restaurants. She met the neighbors and helped with renovations and became part of the town, instead of just the billionaire who'd once caused a scandal. One Friday in late April, they went to the diner together. It had become their tradition. Every other week, the three of them, sitting in Caleb's old booth. May had stopped treating them like spectacles and started treating them like family. 4 plates? She asked when they sat down. Yeah, Caleb said. Caleb, looking at the small photo of Emma that May had hung on the wall behind the counter. 4 plates. May brought their food, 3 for them to eat, 1 for the edge of the table. Mia put a fresh flower next to it, something she did now without being asked. They ate and talked and existed together in the space Emma had asked Caleb to keep alive. After dinner, walking to the car through the spring darkness, Mia ran ahead to jump in puddles left by afternoon rain. Vivian took Caleb's hand. I never imagined this, she said. Living in a small town with a carpenter and his kid, my board thinks I've completely lost my mind. Have you? Maybe, but I've never been happier. She looked at him. Thank you for letting me stay when you could have pushed me away. Thank you for being too stubborn to leave. That's my specialty. They watched Mia splash through puddles, her laughter carrying across the parking lot. Caleb thought about where he'd been 2 years ago, broken, going through motions, keeping promises that felt more like chains than bridges. He thought about the night Vivian walked through that diner door and started asking questions he didn't want to answer. You know what I learned? He said. What? Yuts. That grief doesn't end. It just makes room. Emma's still part of my life, but so are you, and so is whatever future we're building. Both can be true at the same time. That's a good lesson. Well, it took me long enough to figure it out. Some things take time. They got in the car, Mia still chattering in the back seat. As they drove home, Caleb looked at the 2 people who'd become his family through circumstances he never could have predicted. A daughter who'd survived loss and illness and was somehow still brave enough to keep being a kid. A partner who'd crashed into his life and refused to leave even when staying was complicated. At home, after Mia was asleep and the house was quiet, Caleb and Vivian sat on the porch in the spring darkness. The air smelled like rain and new growth, everything coming back to life after winter. I've been thinking about that promise, Vivian said. The one Emma made you make. What about it? She was smart. She knew you'd get stuck if she wasn't careful. So she made you promise to keep living in the places you loved, not to turn them into graveyards. Yeah. Us people. I think she'd be proud of you for keeping that promise, for being brave enough to move forward. Caleb thought about Emma, about the woman he'd loved and lost and would carry with him forever. About the way love didn't disappear when someone died. It just transformed, became part of who you were, shaped how you loved the next person. I think she'd like you, he said to Vivian. She'd probably think you were too intense, but she'd like that you don't let me hide from hard things. Well, someone has to keep you honest. Lucky me. They sat there in the darkness, holding hands, two people who'd both been alone too long, finally figuring out how to build something together. It wasn't perfect. They still fought about money and time and all the complications that came with merging two completely different lives. But it was real and honest and full of the kind of love that survived because both people chose it every day. That was the thing about promises, Caleb realized. They weren't magic. They didn't protect you from pain or loss or all the ways life could break your heart, but they gave you a reason to keep showing up, a reason to keep trying even when trying hurt. Emma had made him promise to keep living, and he'd kept that promise even when it would have been easier to just exist. And that promise had led him here, to a porch in spring darkness, holding hands with a woman who made him believe that second chances were real. He made a new promise then, silently to himself, to stay open, to stay brave, to keep choosing love even when it was terrifying, to build a life worth living instead of just surviving, to teach Mia that grief and joy could exist in the same heart, that moving forward wasn't betrayal, that being happy again didn't mean forgetting who came before. It was a promise he intended to keep, not because it was easy, not because he wouldn't fail sometimes, but because promises, the right ones, weren't chains that held you back. They were bridges that carried you forward into whatever came next. And whatever came next, Caleb was finally ready for it.